Hello and welcome to a 1 week delayed, awesome episode of the Silmarillion Film Project. We have a full house tonight. Lots of voices from the writers' room joining Corey and myself.
That's right.
And we get to watch Beren wreak havoc in Nargothrond.
Yes, trouble is stirred up in Nargothrond. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And we have the distinct pleasure of having this episode's screenwriter Rhiannon join us tonight. And it's always fun when we get to hear from the person who's bringing this to life.
Absolutely.
So,
Welcome
thanks
back,
for joining
Beren.
us.
Yeah. Yeah. So excited to get going today. Let me just start with my normal quick few announcements. The couple things I wanted to highlight that are coming up on our calendar here. First, we have some new Signum Academy clubs starting up in January. We have a Japanese conversation club. Now, our Signum Academy clubs, of course, are extracurricular clubs primarily for middle school and high school kids. So we got Japanese Conversation Club and Elvish Translation Club, both starting up in January. Those are brand new. We're also going to start a new section of our Creative Writing Club, which we had before as well, and as well as continuing our Old English Translation Club and our book club that we've also been doing. So those are some new options. So if you know any kids, ages like 8 to 18 who would be interested in either learning Japanese or learning to read Tolkien's invented Elvish languages, then as Marie nods in approval of this prospect, I encourage you to tell them to register so that we can know of their interest. If you go to Signum University here and then Signum Academy in our non-degree programs, you can get more information on how each of our different clubs works, and the registration button is down here. It's a simple web form that you can fill out in order to just tell us the name of the kid in question and where you're coming from, what especially your time availability is, what you're interested in, and then we'll be in touch to coordinate that and get that all set up. So, and then of course we also have our next regional moot. The beginning of our spring moot season is going to be Osmoot in Brisbane, Australia, on the 27th of January. Very excited for Osmoot. So that is going to be a really good time. Encourage folks. It's good. It's a really great schedule. It's also longer. We're doing more here than, because we're not gonna go all the way to Australia and then just spend a few hours, right? So we're doing some more stuff than usual. So people who sign up for remote attendance, first of all, will probably never have been quite so remote as this, but also will be able to do even more things than usual. So. Anyhow, I don't think the Osmoot schedule has been finalized yet, but I've seen a draft and it's pretty awesome. So we should be releasing that pretty soon, I think. All right. Anyway, we've got the zoomed in map again. Okay. Looking at Beren's path from Doriath. I have to admit, when he was rafting at the beginning, I was like, wait, which river is he rafting in? I'm like, oh, he's probably rafting down the Syrian and then going across to Nargothrond from there. So anyway, all right. Good. We can refer back to the chart here. This is right for if I forget anything about previous episodes, as I'm wont to do. So today we are going to talk about episode 5. So episode 4, of course, was the Doriath episode, right? The falling in love episode. This was a really important one. We talked about this a little while back. So our action today takes Beren to Nargothrond anyway, and Luthien to prison. Okay. Thus we are all ensnared. The quotation from Finrod. This is the title of this episode. Love the title. Love how it encompasses not only, of course, obviously its obvious relevance to the Beren and Finrod plot, but of course also embracing the imprisonment of Luthien as well. All right, so the Oath of Bari here. and the Oath of Feanor in conflict, the crown of Nargothrond falling to the ground. This is our A plot. Okay. Trying to figure out where I want to start exactly to talk about things. Should we talk about the A plot first? Talk about Nargothrond, right? Okay. Well, so let me start off with a sort of a general comment. There are lots of times in film experience where one of the things that I have discovered, and this is one of the things that has most over the years changed my own perspective when I'm watching other adaptations, is that you don't realize how challenging some of the stories, like some of the stories that Tolkien wrote, are to adapt until you do it, right? Often you come and you want to be like, okay, well, we're just going to follow the text here. And then you go to the text and you're like, wait, hang on. There's like Tolkien, one of the things that makes Tolkien's writings really powerful and really effective is how much he leaves to your imagination, how much he doesn't tell you, actually. There are a lot of things that he doesn't tell you, that he just kind of evokes, and doesn't really spell out like what people are thinking and what exactly they're doing and why they're doing it. And that's really good. That's really effective as a writing technique. But it means when you are trying to act out the scene, it creates challenges that you might not necessarily realize. I know I didn't realize. So let me give a specific example, and then we can kind of talk about it, about how you guys were thinking about addressing, the way that you guys were kind of wrestling with this in this episode. The fact that the conflict between the oath of, Finrod's oath to Barahir and the oath of Feanor, the whole, thus we are all ensnared line from Finrod, right? Like, it's pretty clear how that all ends up going. But the hard thing that I was realizing, and it's just one of those things where I was like, I never even really asked this question before. And that is, why does Beren push it? I literally never had this thought in my head before. Like, that Beren goes to Finrod for aid makes sense, right? But when Finrod explains, there's this moment for me when I was reading through the narrative within the episode, right? I was reading through the script. There's this moment for me where I was realizing, and this is not a criticism of the script. It's an observation about the situation that Tolkien has created in the story, is when Finrod explains, okay, so you want me to help you go get a Silmaril. So let me explain the ramifications of that request, right? Not only are you, you have been sent to your death, right? So you're going to bring me along with you, or can I aid you? That's already a gutsy request, right? But okay, let's wait. We can get over that. Sons of Feanor here in right now in the it's going to create something like a civil war if we push this, right? And if you announce this publicly. And at some point, and for some reason, Beren has to be like, yep, let's do it. Right? Finrod is oath-bound to do what Beren requests of him. But Beren is not oath-bound to request it. I mean, and again, so the thought that I found myself having when I was going through this for the first time was what? How do you not make it look like a jerk move, on Beren's part? To be like, yep, no, I'm creating all kinds of trouble for you, but, well, you swore to my dad, so you got to do it, even if it causes you trouble. I don't care, right? I mean, obviously, that's not Beren's attitude, and it needn't, we needn't, I'm not saying that there's no other way to do it other than making Beren look like a jerk. I was just realizing, I never realized the risk of Beren looking like a jerk. Do you see what I mean by that? That seems like a real potential problem that needs to be overcome in this. Why does Beren push it?
Yes, Beren is such a passive character in his own story.
Yes.
Very little of what he does is like, and then Beren came up with a plan, set out, achieved this course of action, and this thing happened. It's all like Beren shows up, and then some stuff happens, and he's like, I don't know what that was all about, but okay.
Yes.
Over and over again. So you get used to just things happening around Beren and be like, okay, I guess this is his story.
This is what happens with Beren, yeah.
Yeah, and this incident in Nargothrond is definitely quintessentially that, but also one of the first times that he seems to have zero control of what's going on, and he's just there along for the ride. So yeah, the story is definitely written that way. Beren's this passive character who has a goal,
Yeah.
but doesn't seem to have any plan or any action he can take. He feels very helpless in his own story.
Right. And it's, I mean, on the one hand, like going to Nargothrond is the action that he's taking, right? I mean, like he is not without resources for this quest. And the number one resource he has is the friendship and support of Finrod Felgund through the oath to his father, right? He knows that. He was there. He knows that. And so again, it's not like I think it's wrong of him to be like, oh, he should never even have gone to Finrod. He should never even have brought this up. It makes sense that he would. What else can he do? I mean, apart from just like, okay, I'm going to go on foot towards Angband, with no plan, like there's very little else he can do. That's fine. But again, like once he's there, that situation of the conflicting oaths that Tolkien creates, the whole situation kind of quietly overlooks the fact that there is one person who has it in his power to prevent this conflict of oaths, and that's Beren. All he has to do is just say, actually, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to invoke the oath. I'm not going to ask it. And I feel like there has to be a reason why he thinks.
Want us to add a scene or change a scene so that
No. Again,
I think there's space to do that if you want him to basically say, I'm so sorry that I brought up this conflict of oaths. Can I go away and let's all pretend this never happened? You won't have any trouble with the Feanorians, and you won't have to worry about fulfilling your oath. And Finrod can say, no, I'm going to help you regardless. There was a scene that I hadn't had time to write yet, but that I was kind of having ideas for. I don't remember the exact number of it, but it's in the annotated outline somewhere, where Finrod was kind of reflecting on how he feels that now his death that he predicted to Galadriel has come upon him, and he thinks back to his brothers and to all the mortals that he's known and how briefly they lived, and even his brothers should have lived very, very long lives because they're supposed to be immortal, but their lives are still cut short, and how he hopes that they had some happiness in that brief time that they had. And so because of that, and because of things like Andreth and Idnor never getting together, he wants to make sure that Beren can have happiness in his life, even if it costs Finrod his own life. Mm-hmm. And that might be a way for him to explain why he's willing to go through with this, why he wants to fulfill his oath, even though it's getting tangled up with the Oath of Feanor.
Yeah, I do agree that the simplest and cleanest way out of the problem is to put it on Finrod, right? To have Finrod insist. To have a scene.
Does he really have the agency to choose not to do it?
Who, Beren?
No, Finrod.
Well, he doesn't have the agency.
Like, can we put ourselves in a position where Beren, and this is a question I have, which is like, remind me, is Beren aware of the consequences of the oath itself, the oath of Barahir, and the consequences?
He was
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say he was present when the oath happened.
Right. But does he really know what that, like, does he know sort of what oaths really mean in this world, or is he just kind of...
Well, I think he does, but again, what he doesn't realize is, I mean, until Finrod explains, in the Thus Are We All Ensnared speech, right, Finrod explains, like, okay, let me tell you, how much crap is going to go down as a consequence of me doing this. That's the point.
Do we have sort of a chain reaction situation where, like, once the request is made, like, there's no going back? Like, you can't undo it. Even if Beren's like, no, really, you don't have to do this.
Right.
Finrod's
like,
nope,
too late. Too late. Yeah.
Like, if you're doing this, then I must come. And
Yeah,
Beren's like, well, I have to do it because I made an oath. Like,
yeah, so that's the thing, is that we have Beren feeling pretty obligated to fulfill his quest.
Sure.
And therefore, his story in this episode is he's being offered some alternatives to that. Like,
yes.
He shows up at Nargothrond going, okay, I'm going to fulfill my quest. And his takeaway from the speech that Finrod gives him is, oh, better not mention Silmarils out loud to anybody else. Like,
Yes.
apparently this is a big deal, so I'll just keep my mouth shut. So he
Yeah.
thinks he's fixing the problem that way. He just tells other people he has a quest and he has to go to Angband.
On the Silmaril say.
Right. He's like, okay,
Yeah.
so just, I have a quest I have to do. It's something about Angband, you guys.
Yeah.
And leaves it at that, so that he's not creating a problem. He thinks he's taking care of Finrod in that way.
Yeah.
But once he decides, like, actually, no, I can't just not do my quest. I really do have to do it. He then has to work for it. Okay, what is the option here then? How can I do this without toppling Nargothrond?
Right.
And so we can have him offering choices to Finrod. But yeah, if Finrod's like, no, this is what you're trying to do, I have sworn to assist you. I know what you're trying to do. Like, now that I know, I have to do it.
Yeah.
So we can kind of like snowball it that way. And the part where Beren makes the choice is someone's got to tell the Fandorians about the Silmaril. So we do leave that up to Beren as to when and how to bring it up.
Yeah.
And they're super eager to work with him, realizing he has Finrod's favor. And that eagerness continues until the moment they hear the word Silmaril. So that's where we're showing that it is Beren's choice that brings this all toppling down. But it's his choice, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, because he could have tried to get them to help him and just been like, let's just play coy with the whole Silmaril thing for as long as possible. Like, I'll just never mention to you guys what I'm up to. So it's his honesty that brings everything out into the open.
Right. Yeah, I mean, big picture wise, it seems like there are two kind of different directions that we could go with this whole conflict of oaths situation. We could either lean into the sort of oaths and destiny, people are all hopelessly ensnared element, right? Beren, like the whole, that circle of oaths, which includes Beren, as you were suggesting, right? Beren has to go and pursue this quest, and so the only thing he can do that isn't purely suicidal is to go to Finrod for help. And having gone to Finrod for help, Finrod can't help but grant the help. But then the Oath of Thanor, and then everybody, and so, like, no matter what they do, like, none of them really have any choice. Like, we can kind of lean into the fact that nobody involved has any choice, and this is just like, a really unfortunate destiny playing itself all out here, right? Or we could go in the direction, Rhiannon, I really liked your suggestion, which seems to me to go in a different direction from that, to say that it's about choice, that Finrod makes a choice, right? Beren could potentially release him from his oath, or at least from applying it in this particular case. And Finrod could say, basically kind of playing on what we saw, what we did with Fingolfin before, with his, and so Finrod has already had this premonition of his death, right? That he was, and then, and this idea of, like, to pursue your calling and fulfill your purpose, and to know when the time, when the time of your death is coming, when it's so for Finrod to say, like, okay, no, I can see that doing this is almost certain to lead to my own death, not to mention, P.S., huge troubles here at home in Nargothrond, but but this is the right thing to do. Like, you want to release me from it, but I think, I sense that this is in fact like a thing I am supposed to be doing, and so I insist on going along and won't let you release me, Rhiannon, as you were suggesting. That element of it, to play up that sense of choice again, kind of it's not identical to, but it's parallel to the way we were having Fingolfin last season, right? Anticipating and kind of setting up his own death at the end of the season. We could do a similar kind of, again, it's not exactly the same, but a parallel kind of thing with Finrod here, and that emphasis on his embracing it. Like, I know what this means, but I'm not going to back away from it, and I'm going to choose this, though it means my own death, and though it may jeopardize the peace of Nargothrond.
Still kind of comes off as wildly
me.
Irresponsible, doesn't it?
What, on Finrod's part?
Yeah.
Well,
but we've established that the king is not the most important person in the kingdom. Like,
but I'm thinking more like it's sort of hard not to conclude that this sets off the chain of events that basically get his, like, just destroy his kingdom and screw his people over.
Well, he didn't foresee all of that. He only foresaw that he would die. So one of the things I wanted to have at the end of this episode was his farewell to Ordreth, and him telling Ordreth, "You are the type of leader that our people need." Kind of like what Fingolfin was doing, setting Fingon up to be his successor.
To be his heir, yeah.
Finrod just kind of doing that with Ordreth. It might be a little more rushed than what Fingolfin was doing, because Fingolfin was doing it over an entire season, and Finrod has one episode from learning that, yep, this is the time when your doom is coming upon you, to actually leaving to go off and eventually get killed.
Right. The Ordreth is perhaps not the leader that the people of Nargothrond deserve, but he is the leader they need. And the fall of Nargothrond will indeed be good to have been.
Right.
Is this an act of fatalism? Like, well, I have to do it, this is an oath, or is this like an act of faith?
That's to me a big question here, and it sounds
to me, Rhiannon, like your position is it's an act of faith, like, especially with sort of the, like, hey, Ordreth, you got this, buddy, like, things will be fine.
I think Finrod is a character who is always full of faith, that he is one of the people who most trust in the Valar in Eru's grand plan. We see that in, like, the Athrobeth or other conversations that he's had. So I think anything Finrod does is an act of faith, even if it on the surface may appear fatalistic. It comes from a deeper faith within, kind of the old hope that he talks about,
right?
Or that Andreth talks about and he learns about.
The deal with Finrod is he's definitely much more of a philosopher than most of the other characters we're dealing with. Like, no one is going to accuse Thingol of being a philosopher,
right?
I mean, he just is a very reactionary type of person. He gets mad and yells at people. Is how he goes through his life, and he doesn't stop and think through what are the consequences and the ramifications and what will happen down the line, which is how naming the Silmaril for the quest happened in the first place. He didn't think it through. Finrod does think it through. He's someone who has that very philosophical outlook of what is the meaning of this, what is the purpose of all of this, where are we all going, where have we all come from. He's pondering all these things his whole life, and very much reaches out to people and gives them a chance.
Right.
His friendship with the dwarves, his friendship with inviting the Feanorians into Nargothrond in the first place, is let me give these people a chance. So the fall of Nargothrond, when Ordreth extends that same kind of welcome to Turin, of like, hey, let's bring you into our place and give you a chance. It's not like Ordreth was a terrible leader and destroyed the kingdom, and Finrod never should have left that guy in charge. It's not really quite like that. Definitely Ordreth's a weaker leader.
Yes.
And doesn't have the same force of personality that Finrod did, so he wouldn't be able to guide the whole people in a direction the way Finrod could. But it's not like Finrod just doomed his whole people in this one moment. They were all doomed when they crossed the Helcarax. So like he knows
right,
that.
Exactly. Let's not sugarcoat this. Yeah.
He made Nargothrond as a place of safety. Ordre's gonna lean into the place of safety. It's gonna be Turned who's like, no, we should totally build that bridge, you guys.
And because of course, there's going
to
and there's going to be some irony in the fact that in taking Turin in and trusting Turin the way that he does, he's actually like continuing and extending Finrod's own policy of friendship with humans, right? And
yes,
that's
exactly
what is ultimately going to lead to the downfall of Nargothrond, right? Kind of, ironically in some ways, but yeah.
So, to kind of return briefly to the idea of, does Finrod have a choice in the matter? I think that we can kind of have our cake and eat it too a little bit here, in that it starts out as Finrod saying, well, I'm bound by my oath. You have to, like just knowing you haven't come and asked me for help. It doesn't matter if you then retract the request. I'm honor bound to help you. And then further down, Beren offers to release him from his oath, which is a big deal.
Would be a big deal.
Right? Here's a favor owed to you and your descendants in perpetuity by one of the greatest elf lords on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, that's not something you give up lightly.
Right.
And so that Beren is willing to do that, gives him some agency in the episode. But B, gives Finrod the opportunity to then actually make a decision.
Right. And if Finrod refuses that, then nothing has changed. Like, it doesn't alter the story in any way. It just provides that moment of to spell out both of that. And so it's hard, like
it gives agency to both of them.
Give agency to, Now, of course, the let's strip everybody of agency and lean into the fatalism side, like, there are ways in which that's an attractive story. I like Tolkien kind of liked stories like that. I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons why he arranges this way, I think.
Yes.
But I think we can kind of do both. Like, we can still show those conflicts, and there will be a way in which we can kind of take that what could simply be fatalism, right? I mean, like, Finrod's response could be, I mean, like, if you think about thus are we all ensnared, right? That could mean, so basically everybody's screwed and everything sucks, right? Like, that's one way to read it. Like, that's one possible reaction to it. But that's not Finrod's reaction to it, right? Finrod's response is instead, Dave, as you were saying, one of faith, right? Instead, he's going to take the Estelle approach, the Estelle view on this entire thing, and say, okay, no, let's not back down from this. I mean, there's almost an element of, like, I shall take your need as a sign, right? That, like, this is what I'm supposed to do, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you don't want to push it. It doesn't matter if you don't want, it's like the fact that you have this, I cannot turn away from that. I shouldn't turn away from that. I am supposed to have, it has been, that is the path that is laid before me. It doesn't seem like a good idea. It looks like really horrible things are going to happen as a consequence, and I'm almost certainly going to die, but I'm doing it anyway because I think that that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and it comes back to Gandalf's point of view of Frodo was meant to have the ring, right? And Bilbo was meant to find it. And Finrod definitely thinks that when Beren comes and gives him the request, this is what's meant to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm supposed to do this.
Yeah.
So if he were to back off at this point, so, if Beren says, my bad, I wasn't trying to create this whole thing.
Yeah.
I'll just release you, forget the oath ever happened. We're cool. I'll figure out my own issues.
Right.
If Beren were to say all of that, Finrod has the opportunity to be like, no, this is what needs to happen, and I need to do that thing because this is the correct thing to do. So I think it would be best to give Finrod the opportunity to voice some of what he is thinking.
Yeah.
And articulate why he feels he needs to make this choice.
Yeah.
Does he have like a glimpse of the ultimate end here? Does he kind of see like maybe he has like some awareness of the long game? Like, well, yeah, sure, it's going to turn out bad for me and probably a lot of other people around me, but like, does he have some notion that like we're on the path to salvation? This is the only way it happens.
I think he has already, and that was the vision that he had while he was with Galadriel back in, I believe it was season 4, where he says something about he will not take a wife, his kingdom will not long endure. It was something like that. I don't remember the exact wording, but he basically saw this already, and having him repeat that or say the same thing in different words would be a callback to it, so that viewers who are paying attention will remember, oh yeah, that was what he had the vision about. So now it's coming into play.
Right. But there's I just realized a really cool thing here. When he has that picture, it's a negative one, right? Like the foresight that he has for his life and his kingdom is all bad, right? It's like, I'm never gonna love again and get married. I'm gonna die pretty soon, and my kingdom's gonna collapse. Okay. There we go. That's the plan moving forward, right? That's the sense that he has. But there's no sense that he sees like what good will come from that. Like,
where's his hope in all of this?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what it gets. Now that he sees it, he gets to have that moment of
Beren and Luthien.
This is what I need to be doing this for.
Yes.
It's so that Beren and Luthien have a chance.
I always knew I was going to die. I always knew I always knew I was going to die alone. I always knew my kingdom was going to collapse. Now I see what is the thing that is going to make that worthwhile. Right? That is going to be now I'm seeing finally, like, he'd be happy. Ironically, this would be a relief to him, because he's now seeing like all he had was the grim prediction of the bad facts, right? And now he's like, oh, so I'm gonna die alone, and my kingdom is gonna collapse in order to help you and Luthien.
Almost like an answer to a riddle.
Yeah. I think that's
nice. This is it's a kind of a. Are you feeling better, Corey?
I am. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better. I'm liking this, and of course. So no, Nick, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say I like the comment from Honorian that Finrod holds up one finger for Tony Stark to see. It's essentially that. It's essentially the moment where it becomes clear what the thing is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The thing with the Silmarillion is there's a lot of grim parts of the story, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to get to the Turin season at some point, and we're going to have to deal with that. But the Beren and Luthien season is where you don't have to deal with the really grim stuff unmitigated by anything else.
Yeah, where hope is born. Yeah.
You get to really broadcast the hope part.
Yeah.
And get through the grim stuff because you see what it's for.
Yes.
And I think that-that's an important season-long theme that needs to be coming out in this episode.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, even the narrator in the Silmarillion said, remember when Finrod delivers that line to Galadriel about not, loving in his kingdom can do nothing. I'm trying to remember the word. Is it like he says, such like cold counsel had never come to him before, like. When
she's surprised by his words because she's never heard him talk like that before.
Yeah, and there's a reference, like, basically it's emphasized that it's not like he's just a pessimistic person, right? Who's always been like, I'm probably going to die, my kingdom's going to come to nothing. Like, this is new, right? This is a new revelation from him and even to him in that moment. And for him to be able to kind of process, that, yeah, I mean, I think that's. I really like that, and I really like how Rihanna and I saw that you were working, Andreth and Ignor into sort of the memory of that at various points into the episode, and I really liked that as well. And of course, the danger here is there's a certain danger in connecting, in how we connect that, right? Because obviously we don't want to make it look like Finrod is remembering his friend Andreth and being like, well, gosh, like that didn't work out and that was sad, so I hope maybe this can work. Like, basically, we don't want to make it feel like he's feeling guilty or something, right? Like, Andreth couldn't be happy, so maybe I'll do this, and, to make up for it or whatever. So it's not like that exactly, but for him to see, I mean, again, I think of the image from the Athrobeth, which sticks with me most powerfully, and was brought out really well in our Athrobeth episode, is that image of the two hands reaching out across the darkness, right across the void. And for him to now follow that up, right? All those revelations, all those new understandings that Finrod gained from his conversation with Andreth and his experience of Aignor and Andreth's ultimately doomed love. And now, like, he sees, like, in Beren and Luthien, he realizes it's possible. Like, you can reach across. That was indeterminate at the end of the Athrobeth, right? He didn't know if it was really possible for that to, he hoped that it was possible. He was, to his extent, extending his own hand, right? In friendship. Go ahead, sorry. No. That was me, sorry.
Didn't he also say something about, I don't remember if it was in our episode or not, if I'm just remembering it from the direct text of the Athrobeth, but I think he said something about it shall only happen for like a high purpose of fate, or something like that. Like, if this does happen, it will only be because of the grand plan and something very important beyond simple people falling in love. It's about the fate of the world.
I remember something like that too, from the Athrobeth. I also don't remember for sure if we had included it in the episode, but yeah, if all of this crystallizes together in Finrod's head, if he realizes this is the moment, like Beren and Luthien, this is it. Beren and Luthien are it. Beren and Luthien are the hope for bridging this gulf. This is a part of the plan, right? And of course, here I'm thinking about the distant echoes of this, when we're talking about the line of Luthien, right? Never shall that line fail, right? That we get in the Lord of the Rings. It's like an anticipation of, the hope shall be born for our people line, with Gilrine, or surrounding Gilrine. Anyway, I love this. I mean, I think that that's a really beautiful way to kind of shape this, to have the destiny stuff there. I mean, but to not back away from that. But in a sense, instead of making Finrod feel fatalistic in the sense of like giving up, right? Like, it doesn't matter what any of us choose. We're all screwed. Everybody's trapped. Instead, the result is he's ultimately, it's like he's being guided by this, right? Like, it's what is in motion cannot be avoided, and what is in motion is Beren and Luthien, right? Beren and Luthien coming together, which means, under the circumstances, Beren's quest, right? And so if he were to die in helping Beren in his quest, that would be a good reason to die, and would even be connected back to Andreth. As I said, Rhiannon, it was one of the things I enjoyed most about the draft was the callbacks, the memories back to Andreth, and the way that you were showing how Finrod's involvement does kind of superimpose the memory of Andreth and Aignor onto Beren and Luthien, which I think is really, really important and adds a really cool dimension. It's one of the fun things about doing this from a post-Athrobeth perspective, right? Which, like the Beren and Luthien story never gets this dimension added to it explicitly because the Athrobeth was written so much later, right? But now when we can do that in the order, like, it will have happened first, right? It's, it will very much, and especially for Finrod, goodness, right? There is no way he would not be thinking about Andreth and his brother when he's having this conversation with Beren. Like, how could he possibly escape making that connection even if he wanted to? And so the way that you were working to overlay those two things, I think that's brilliant. I just love that element of this, and I think it makes Finrod's involvement in this whole sequence really, really crucial. Really, really pivotal, really powerful in that way. So I thought that was pretty fun.
So I'm glad to hear that. The Afterbirth is probably one of my favorite things that Tolkien wrote. So I'm working that in there whenever I have the chance. It's not in the outline the script team puts together. I'm like, and add a mention of it.
Yes. Yeah. No, I hear that.
Wherever possible.
Especially since, Finrod's dying soon, so we're running out of free chances to bring up the Afterbirth.
Exactly. I realize there are so many people in this episode that he talks to for the last time.
Yes.
So one of the things I wanted to do was make sure that whatever he says to them is a good final word to have said to them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that you're right. There is a lot of weight on a lot of those things in this episode because, he is saying goodbye to everybody but Beren and the 10 at this point. Okay, so let's talk about the Feanorian side. I was really interested in this element. Again, this is another thing that is challenging to, again, in the text, we just get and Curufin was standing right there and steps forward and said, the whole thing happens in one scene, right? And one thing I wanted explained, maybe one thing I wanted help with was understanding Celegorm Curufin's position. So here was my problem. My problem was that it seems to me that we had Celegorm and Curufin having two separate plans, basically, right? There's the, hey, son of Bari here, to whom Finrod is oathbound, is here. Let's capitalize on that situation if we can. That seemed like a very Curufin idea. I really liked that concept. And then, Beren is going after the Silmaril. Let's now capitalize on that situation, right? And ultimately, at least quasi-usurp Nargothrond in this moment. But it felt to me, and maybe I was there's some things that I wasn't processing through properly, but it seemed to me that what they were actually proposing were a little bit in conflict with each other.
Right. So the place where we left off Celegorm and Curufin in episode 3 is that they're trying to retake Tolsirian.
Yeah.
And their proposal was to put troops in Brethil,
right,
as a staging area in order to do that. And they were a little bit heavy-handed about doing this. They obviously didn't talk to the people in Brethil. They were starting to just kind of move troops around without talking to Finrod, and
right.
It became a conflict of who's in charge here. And
right.
There were some little public debates about it, and at the end of the day, the Feanorians lost. Nobody in Nargothrond was all that keen on putting troops in Brethil without the permission of the men of Brethil. So that's where they left off. That's the last time we saw them.
Mm-hmm.
So when we open and they're like, cool, and in with Finrod, this is for them to gain political capital, right? To be able to put their ideas forward and win.
Yeah.
So that's where they're starting with.
Right.
They do switch gears as soon as the Silmaril comes up because that supersedes all their plans.
Sure.
Retaking Tolsirian is nothing compared to who gets to have a Silmaril in their minds. So we're seeing them drop their plans and go in a different direction to show how much the oath shapes their actions as well.
Yeah.
All of their build up here of let's take over Nargothrond, let's consolidate our power, let's have a plan to get Tolsirian is like, oh heck no. You all better stay locked in your cavern forever. You're all gonna die and nobody gets a Silmaril.
Yeah.
Totally different direction.
Yeah, because it was. And here, of course, I can see we're following the text, which says
with
that
those speeches,
the tack that they're taking, in their argument against Finrod's departure is to make them fear the people of Nargothrond, fear for their safety, and shut themselves in more, and that Finrod is leading them out to which seems to me a little rich in somebody who is like, let's attack, except no, wait, oh no, going out is really that was a big shift, but the size of the shift, it does successfully demonstrate, like, okay, different game completely now that a Silmaril is being evoked, but it made, like, why does anybody agree with them? When it's, everybody knows that they've been, like, the whole direction they've been going is outward, let's attack. And now all of a sudden they're like, no, let's adopt a 100% isolationist policy. Like, it's kind of hard to imagine why Curufin would argue that at all, apart from the fact that he does in the text. That is.
Right.
So I think that what we could do is have him explain this more after the speech. Like, the speech is kind of a spur of the moment thing. Mm-hmm. There isn't much time that passes between them learning that Beren is going after a Silmaril and delivering their big speeches to all the people of Nargothrond. And one of the things that the book mentions is that they kind of wanted to take over all of the other elven kingdoms before they go after the Silmarils. In Silmfilm, we've made Curufin always kind of be gunning for that High King position for himself. Mm-hmm. So this could be his attempt to basically become king of everything, kind of by taking it over one piece at a time. And I don't think he really has this idea until the Silmarils are brought up and he kind of spur of the moment says, let's not all rush off to our deaths. And another thing is that his speech can focus more on how foolish it is to follow this specific mortal in this specific quest, and how Finrod and his 10 people, they're going to their deaths. Or Finrod and anyone who follows him, they're all going to their deaths because this guy won't have the support of the Feanorians because only they can get a Silmaril.
Yeah.
So all that is definitely in there. Another thing to remember is that the last time that Curufin made a big push to get the people of Nargothrond on board with an offensive, or preparation for an offensive, it failed, right? So it's possible that he's reading the terrain here. And now, of course, he can pass this off as we were talking about a well-executed plan with a staging area and getting our troops as close as possible to Tol Sirion without them being in danger of being harried the whole way there. You're talking about a suicide mission to Angband. Mm-hmm. That's not the same thing. And a suicide mission for something that isn't yours. That's not yours to take. What? How entitled are you that you think that it's okay for you to just go and take our stuff? Yeah, sure, Morgoth stole it first, but
right.
Just because you're stealing from the thief doesn't mean that you aren't also stealing.
Right. And so the way that the conversation between Beren and Celgorm and Curufin was framed in the script, the first conversation with them, right, when he's first admitting the Angband plan, right, but omitting the Silmaril element of that, right. I really liked how that conversation went, right, how he's like, I got to go to Angband, and Curufin is like, oh yeah, somebody is kept prisoner there. Totally feel you, man. Like that's hard. That's hard, right? Which is also, of course, a nice reminder that, like, his wife is still there, right? Even though it's been a while. But then Beren being like, no, it's not a prisoner thing. I just feel the need to attack Angband. It's what I do. And they're like, oh, okay, that's crazy. And they try to reason with him. They're like, love the enthusiasm, right? That's great. That's great, but not a good plan right away. Like we've, the entire strength of the Elven kingdoms have not been able to do that. But good. So good long-term goal. But and the way that seemed to set up that plan, the let's consolidate the Elven realms under a good High King, namely me, and then do this, especially, of course, wanting to set up what's going to happen in the next episode when suddenly Luthien falls into their lap and he's like, I had a plan. We've been moving forward this plan to consolidate the Noldor kingdoms under our rule. But Doriath was always going to be a problem, right? How are we going to be able to influence or rule over Doriath? Well, look at this. Ask and ye shall receive. Here we go. Now we have an angle. So I really like how that sort of potentially sets it up.
We need to make the shift in plan stated more directly than it is to help that come across to the audience, because it's something that we weren't all entirely conscious of, because the script had come up with this idea of having Celorgrim and Curfin trying to retake Minas Tirith kind of as our own element to the story, without fully thinking through how that would be impacted by the fact that we kind of do need to stick to the text with why they're convincing the people of Nargothrond not to fight, because of how much that impacts other stories later on. But now we have to kind of undo what we were doing with that by having them change their plans, but we can still tell a story, and that's just the story of them changing plans.
Yeah, and I would ideally, it's a change of tactic, but not necessarily a change of overall plan, right? As I think what it needs to, it came across, and again, partly this is coming across in the outline, right? I mean, this was the Curfin speeches and everything were all in the unfinished part of the script, so it's not quite the same. But in any case, like from the bullet point list, it kind of suggested not just a change in tactic, but did we say attack? No, we meant pure isolationism. No, that's really what we've meant all along. And again, it's hard to, like, I'm sure he's we're told he's really persuasive, right, and really charismatic, but come on. I mean, like, when he is doing an about face like that, again, the about face, that he would do some kind of an about face is good to show the effect of the oath on him. But that doesn't increase his credibility to the populace. It just makes the rest of the people of Nargothrond look like morons, that they're going to have started following him in the one direction, then be like, oh, no, you're right. Let's go 180 degrees in the opposite direction.
Well, they weren't following him in the first direction. That was kind of the result of their big public debates, was that the majority of the people in Nargothrond didn't want to go attack and retake Minas Tirith. That was just the Celorgrim and Curfin and their followers.
Not even that. They didn't just not want to go and retake Minas Tirith. They didn't want to even go forward with Curfin's first stage of the plan. Right. And so what we had talked about when we were discussing this episode is to make sure that Curfin uses the way that the people, like the existing attitude of the people, right, to kind of explain this kind of shift. But I think that making it more explicit as far as his we're not ready. He can even cite Orodreth from the first time that they had this conversation back in episode 3, right, in order to support his case. And now Orodreth is standing there like, oh man, they did it again. They did it to me again. Right. Yeah. You want an isolationist policy? I'll give you an isolationist policy. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now he can say, he can be very conciliatory. He can say, look, we're all about taking the fight to Morgoth. We're with you on that. but it just isn't time yet. We're not ready.
Yeah.
You said this yourselves.
If they characterize basically to say it's not about do we attack or do we not attack, right? Because they've been saying we should attack. So he's not changing his mind about that. But that's not what it's about, right? That's not what Finrod. That's not what Finrod is proposing.
Right.
Finrod is proposing invading Angband, right? And so it's not going to be that hard to make that sound like a really stupid plan, right? As just exactly following in lines, Rhiannon, of the scene that you did write with Beren and Celgorm and Curufin earlier, right? Where they're like, okay, little human friend, like, we're invading Angband. This is you're probably not even old enough to realize what a stupid idea that is. Like, but basically
when have no track record when it comes to offensive battles against fortifications. They've done pretty good at defending fortifications.
Yes.
Not
some of them.
One time did they and there's this sense even in the Near Knife that they didn't bring a single siege engine to that fight, which just seems bananas. What on earth could they possibly have been thinking? Oh, we'll just run up and bang on the doors and they'll just open for us. That's how that's going to work.
It did work for Fingolfin because Morgoth actually came up and fought him. So maybe they're hoping to do that again.
There is a track record of knocking on the doors.
And are annoying enough, they'll come out.
That's right. He's come out 50% of the time you've knocked on the doors. So
there you go.
that's reasonable odds. Yeah. No, I agree. So if we focus it on that, so that in a sense then, so one of the things that is most important for future story, right, as an outcome of this whole incident, right, Finrod's leaving and Celgorm and Curufin's speeches, right, is that from this point on, the Nargothrond are determined on isolationism and hiding, right, that will be so until the time of Turin. That's the consequence of these speeches. That doesn't necessarily mean that itself has to be what Curufin is advocating, right? Let us become, isolationist pacifists. It doesn't have to be his argument. Instead, he can say, look at the path that Finrod is suggesting. What Finrod is suggesting is madness. He's suggesting invading Angband right now. The whole continent is still trying to recover from that last battle. We don't have defenses anymore. Tulsirion has gone, orcs can come pouring down. And then instead of trying to and here we've been arguing, can we try some logical and strategic steps to try to rebuild our defenses? But no, we're going to go right past that, right? We're just going to go bloody invading Angband, right? So that's a really, so Finrod is leading you to suicide and death, right? Which is not a hard argument to make when he's
and we know how insane it is. Our brother's been there. Our brother was chained to a wall.
Yeah, exactly.
Not too many prisoners get out of Angband.
Right. Exactly. So so it's not. It's also. It's not that he's advocating isolationism, but that would be their logical. You're right. We're not going to do that, and so therefore we're not going to do anything. Go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
I was just going to say basically, the minute Feanorians stand up and start saying, if you try to go after Silmarils, really bad stuff will probably happen to you. Not least of which because we might do it to you.
Yes.
I guess it's understandable that people might be like, you know what? I don't want anything to do with any of this.
Right.
Yeah, it's fair enough. It's so the plan proposed is go attack Morgoth directly without any kind of really military might, a thing that's never worked previously and certainly seems like it won't work now. And best case scenario, we'll come out with a Silmaril, and then that guy right over there will probably, burn the kingdom down to get it from us. And suppose, maybe a reasonable conclusion is this is not something we should be involved in.
Right. Yeah. Let's not go there at all. Yeah, because actually, this is the other cool thing about citing the oath, right? You'd think one perspective on this might be if Curufin is saying, look, if you bring a Silmaril back, you're causing civil war and it'll be your fault, right? On the one hand, like that could be like, well, dude, aren't you the one who would be attacking him? And so doesn't that kind of make it your fault that we would be in civil war? But
No. You made them do it. It's like if you know, when the police officer says put your hands up, you don't put your hands up and he shoots you,
it's your fault.
It's your fault.
Yes. And this is for the Feanorians, it's even like by restating the oath, he's like, let me explain to you again how gravity works, people, right? Okay, like the Silmarils are ours. You bring home a Silmaril, you've caused a civil war. What are we supposed to do, right? It's the oath, you know.
We're supposed to not fulfill what we have sworn.
Like this is, and you know this, and I'm going to remind you of it right now. Right. And so
a little bad cop, good cop going on there, which I like.
Right, and that's the whole thing is that Celegorm and Curfin give very different speeches.
Yes.
So Celegorm starts it off with the oath. And don't you dare name the Silmaril because bad things will happen to you, like me. Right. So
bad things will happen to you, and he is standing right in front of you.
I mean, yeah. So it's a very reactionary thing, but also reminding everyone of, oh yeah, right. We don't really want anything to do with that.
Right.
And then Curfin's like, okay, so let's break down the plan. Attacking Angband for the fun of it. That sounds dumb.
Really bad plan. Yeah.
Could we maybe, have a plan, any plan, something that has a future and a path forward and all those things you usually think of when you think of the word plan? Yeah. So after Curfin breaks it down, he's going to sound very reasonable.
Yeah.
But everyone he's talking to just heard Celegorm's speech. So that, the conclusion of, let's lock the doors and never go out again.
Let's just avoid the heck out of this whole thing. Yeah.
Is a reaction to both speeches together.
Yeah.
Even though neither of them individually said, you should be pacifist.
Right. Exactly. That they, so effective are they in laying out the fact that, like, of the world of pain that will come from following Finrod's. Because, I mean, it's true. Like, in the short term, it's going to lead to suffering and inescapable death because it's invading Angband is a terrible idea. In the long term, like the best case scenario is you win. And then by winning, bring about civil war among all the elves, right? Like that's the best case scenario, right?
And more pain and inescapable
death. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, so, it's like, I suppose like the follow-up to that is like, so wait, who's this guy again? And why does he want a Silmaril? And why would we help him?
Exactly. Right. So so this is and then Finrod has to stand by him. Right. You could easily see the crowd turning against Beren, Dave. You're absolutely right. Right. Like, okay, so there is a problem here, and this guy is the problem. Like, we didn't have a problem until this guy came and is like, I've got a hankering for a Silmaril, right? But now he has, and he's caused all this trouble. So let's just kick him out. And then everybody's happy again. But Finrod's like, nope, can't, won't. And that's when, therefore, like, so basically, actually, that would be a really cool way to lever it, wouldn't it, Dave? To lever the kicking out of Finrod, being like, we're kicking Beren out, right? We're gonna get rid of Beren. He's the problem. And Finrod is like, then you have to get rid of me too, because I am sticking with him.
I like it.
Yeah.
And one could easily imagine like average Nargothrondian citizen on the street just being like, what? Okay, you know what? Get out! Like, to hell with you too. Like,
right.
Our king just said that he would rather go off with this random person who just showed up and help him invade Angband and steal the Feanorian brothers Silmaril and incite all this violence, rather than stay here and be the king and take care of us. So
yes,
you know what? Like,
our king has retired to Crazy Town, and
it kind of sounds like he's going nuts.
It does. That sounds insane.
Curfin can absolutely bring up like, Dave, when you were saying at the beginning how it's kind of irresponsible what Finrod is doing, Curfin can point that out.
Yeah.
Like, what responsible king, which is also a dig at Fingolfin,
right?
What responsible king would throw themselves into such a scenario. Does Finrod think that our cause is so doomed to failure that it's not even worth living? Because that's kind of what it seems like he's thinking.
Is he lining up to commit suicide by Morgoth here and bring all of us with him? Yeah. Yep.
So I'm imagining this almost like a political advertisement where it's like,
Yes.
Finrod wants to go on doomed quest to find Silmaril. Finrod supports mortals even when they have bad ideas. Finrod swears oaths that will take him away from his responsibility to his kingdom. Vote for Curufin today.
Yes.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, in grainy black and white images of Finrod with making embarrassing facial expressions. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
This message has been brought to you by the Sea Bros for a safer Valerian.
That's it. That's it.
And another thing is the oath mentions mortals, even though it was sworn in Valinor before they'd encountered any humans.
Yeah.
So Feanor never met a human being because they weren't alive at the same time. But the oath specifically says that they don't get to have Silmarils.
Mortal
either.
yet unborn, yeah.
Yeah, mortal yet unborn is one of the groups
They
called out of people who can't have a Silmaril.
Proactively closed that loophole. Yes. Yeah.
Right. So I think that who's this guy think he is to claim a Silmaril, there's a direct reference in the oath to that.
Yeah.
And that's what they can lean into, of like, look, this was decided 500 years ago. I don't know why you think you can just show up now and change the rules.
Yes.
So yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I think they can make it look like not only are Beren and Finrod being unreasonable and making terrible decisions, but that they're upsetting the way things are supposed to be, and therefore nothing good will come of this.
Yes.
We'll all end in tears. I just know it.
Yes, and okay, now this is making me feel much better about that. I think this is a good way to sort of resolve that, and it really plays out, Rhiannon, much more clearly the seeds that are planted in the Beren and Celegorm and Curufin conversation at the beginning, like unbeknownst to any of them, he is giving them the ammunition for their speeches later on, in how So yeah. So it is a new idea. They are being spontaneous, but in some ways, Beren is a probably insane mortal who wants to go commit suicide in Angband is already a thought they had right about him, and so to be able to then use that and then twist that against Finrod himself.
And let's be real. Does anybody seriously think that Beren could have walked up to Angband and gotten a Silmaril ever without Luthien with him?
No, I mean the whole thing is insane. Yeah,
I don't care if Finrod actually survives and gets there. I don't think that he makes it, because first thing, Morgoth's not going to let himself get into a room with Finrod if he thinks that there's even the slightest chance that he could be overpowered and placed under a sleep spell.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's that's, I think, would be the really fun thing about organizing this scene, right? Is that Celegorm is harsh, and his speech just rests upon the oaths of Feanor. Like, he's not going to win a whole lot of sympathy. Like, you wouldn't just listen to Celegorm's speech and it
would rattle a bunch of people.
Oh, I mean, it'd freak people out, but it's not gonna be like, oh, I'm on your side now. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Let's go with the greedy, vengeful dude who's threatened to kill us all. Like, okay, like no one's. But then Curufin comes in and his explanations, right? Like, the cool thing is, I think that we can give Curufin a speech which is not wrong in any point, right? I mean, he's completely correct in what he's, because as you say, like it is totally insane to go to Angband. I mean, at the end of the day, what Beren is, this was an execution. This was a protracted execution of Beren by Thingol, right? And so at the end of the day, what it kind of boils down to is Beren approaching Finrod and saying, "Hey, you want to get executed with me?" Right?
Yeah. Who wants to come die? Let's go.
Who wants to come die with me? I'm being sent to my death. Anybody in? Right? Like, you want to join me?
They're not gonna make it to Ang.
There's no way.
Even let's say Finrod and the entire army of Nargothrond and the Feanorians. Let's say everybody who's there is like, yes, we're totally in with this plan for, mind control reasons or something.
Right.
Then they go to Angband and they all die. Like,
right.
There still is no plan there.
No,
like,
there's no plan.
It's not like Beren getting Finrod's help meant, okay, now I can do this.
Exactly. Yeah. No, his odds of success have not changed significantly with the recruiting of Finrod. But yeah, no, so yes. So like Curufin and all Thingol has, all Finrod has on his side, right, is I am doing the right thing. Like basically his faith, right? His Estelle that like this clearly is what should be. And so therefore, and I don't know how it's going to work. It doesn't make any sense. But like
very convincing public policy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have a vague feeling that this is going to pay off in like a few millennia if we go this direction, right? Like, I mean, it's okay. So
likely none of you will be here to see it.
Right, but. Exactly. I mean, but seriously, they're like, because it is important that true love should prevail is a terrible reason to make national policy, right? Like, it's not a good plan. So
how any of this works.
Believes in true love. Vote for Curufin.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Could you imagine the ads parodying that speech that Curufin could make in his campaign? Yeah.
Should we
have to go edit some?
Should we go so far as to? I was just talking about the idea of like, suppose they actually. So obviously, like the sort of more faithful to the text version is he abdicates. Could we have them actually depose him?
Well, that's where I was thinking. The whole I was kind of going halfway there, basically. If they're going to kick Beren out, right? He's the problem. Let's kick him out and go back to like basically the main reaction of all the people is like, can we go back to the day before yesterday and just pretend none of this ever happened, right? Let's get rid of Beren and then we've solved our problem. Finrod then goes with him. So they're not exactly usurping him. They're not exactly taking him out. But they do make it clear, like, if you go with him, you're like, we're not coming with you. Like you are abdicating. Should you walk? Beren is walking out that door. If you walk out that door after him, you're not king anymore. Like you have abdicated when you do that. We don't have to spell it out, but we can make it pretty clear that they are not in support of this. That the political smear campaign that Curufin runs in his one speech will be sufficiently effective that basically he'll be confirming everything Curufin said if he does that, right?
Right. I think what we set up as the moment of decision is the group consensus is Beren needs to go now.
Yeah.
And once that is voiced and people are like, yes, definitely. Finally, we solved this. And Finrod says, then I'm going with him. And he takes his crown off and throws it on the ground and follows Beren out. Yeah. And then everyone's like, so I don't think we're deposing Finrod, and I don't think we're showing people calling for him to abdicate or anything like that. But his action of choosing Beren is like, oh yeah, he's done here. And no one, like 10 guys, go with him, but nobody else does because of everything Curufin has just said. Like you say, it confirms that, we didn't want any part of that.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was all about, but it had nothing to do with me. And that is the isolationism of Nargothrond. It had nothing to do with me.
And Anorian reminded us a little bit earlier that we had talked about how the people of Nargothrond have absolutely had it with Finrod putting humans first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And making decisions based on what's best for human people. Like, he brought in a few of them and it wasn't a big deal, but then they were everywhere and they weren't
That got awkward. Yeah.
Like, it was really ugly, and they were getting mad at us.
Yeah.
For them not being good at stuff. Like that's somehow our fault.
Right.
And
right.
So they leave, and then he spends a whole bunch of time out there with them, and just completely abandoning his own kingdom. And now he lets this guy in here and is going to run off and wants us all to go.
Now he's prioritizing the insane quest of this one human over the entire kingdom.
Right. And our lives. He wants us to go out there and die.
Yep. Exactly. No, and if we have now, I see that as the Real-Eyed Duckman is saying, the biggest danger in this story segment is to make it appear that Finrod gives up his position lightly. Right. No, and that's where we have the conversations with Finrod and Beren, emphasizing that like he knows the weight of this, and he sees this. He is sacrificing his life. Like he is knowingly sacrificing his life, and so when he finds himself in the position of having to sacrifice his life and first to sacrifice his crown, he will sacrifice his crown. And for the same kind of reasons that we have seen before. If those reasons are set up earlier, then when he does it, it's clear that it's not whimsical, but that it's part of this larger choice that he's already made, right? He might not have anticipated that was going to be folded into it, but when it becomes clear, he knows what he's going to do. He's not going to struggle or waver with that decision when it's ready to be made. So yes, the casting down of the crown becomes
But he
simpler.
should still look like it weighs heavily on him. Right?
Well, he won't be happy. I'm sure.
Well, no. But what I mean is, it's not like you can't fire me, I quit moment. It's not like he's just like, well, that's it, bang. It's not like when Finway essentially does that. Right.
You can't fire me, I quit. it's really apt, but comical. Yes.
They're trying to impeach me with a room to resign beforehand.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think yes, you're right that we need to make sure it doesn't look like that, right?
Do you want a leader like Richard Nixon?
Right.
Vote for Curafin.
Vote Curafin. No. Rhiannon, I now really want to actually produce this series of political commercials. Like it needs to happen.
Hey, I can do that. I'll finish this episode, then I'll work on it. But actually, the debate team that I coach has been making all these ridiculous ads, like trying to get fictional characters elected to different offices and stuff. So I've got a team that can work on this. Come up with ideas.
Perfect. I would love to see the vote for Curafin, the Go Feanorian ads. It's excellent. It's excellent.
Maybe we can have some Signum merch that says Curafin. Vote for Curafin. Curafin 2024.
Vote for Curafin. Yeah. Hey, we could include some vote for Curafin merch that nobody else would understand. In our Signum store. I would totally get a vote for Curafin pin. And wear it ironically when it's presidential election time.
No, you go to vote with your Curafin pin. People ask you who is Curafin, and you tell them all about how he'd be a much better choice than Finrod, and they're like, "Who is Finrod?"
Exactly.
And then you trick them into listening to you talk about Tolkien.
That's right. What was that, Marie?
I say you don't need a pin; you need a bumper sticker.
A bumper sticker, yeah, that's true.
Why not both?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Vote for Curafin.
Get a sign. Put it in my yard. Curafin.
Yeah.
My very favorite political election sign has been 26 Giant Meteor 2016. I was a big fan of that one.
Yeah.
I liked the Feanor 2020. Burn it all down.
It says that.
Yeah.
But hey, if Feanor is running in 2020, he's probably not going to run again. So it's time for Curafin to step up.
That's right. Okay. I think that's good. I think those were the biggest things I wanted to talk about with the Nargothrond. Anything else with concerning the Nargothrond plotline that any of you guys wanted to raise?
Only, I think, some of the ways in which it parallels the other plot lines, the Luthien story, which we can talk about as we talk about the Luthien story.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the Luthien story. And now, Marie, I'm forgetting what's on our next slide. Oh, this is the Nargothrond slide, which I should have had up the whole time, right?
Oh, I don't know what slide you're on. Yeah, sorry. Nargothrond and then Luthien is on the next
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, oh, my fault. I always forget to advance the slide. Okay.
It's okay.
Luthien's Treehouse, which sounds like an afternoon TV show targeted at ages 3 to 5.
Sometimes interspersed with those
I
group
really
ads.
want my daughter to be watching Luthien Treehouse now.
Yes.
So it's a little shift of mood here.
Yes. Well, and of course, like comical because, of course, it's like a nightmare. Like it's the treehouse when the giant tree out in your front yard decides to eat you and hold you prisoner. Like that's. Yeah.
Yes, a delightful afternoon
Kira
special.
Lord, you're so silly.
Yeah. No, it's it would be a dark children's show, but okay. All right. My question here, so is the idea here that, so Dairon, I'm thinking about Dairon. We had decided that Dairon was not, we weren't going to make Dairon the bad guy in the last, we talked about this a lot. We talked about episode 4, that we didn't want him to just kind of be the Fink and then go away. Right. Now we do have him tattling on Luthien here. Right.
Yes, because we specifically didn't do that storyline before.
Yeah.
We thought this is the place for it because you can only make that mistake once and say, "Oh, sorry, my bad." Essentially, so we're giving this is his one time to think he's helping and then come to the conclusion, in fact, that did not help.
Right. And I like how that sets up the decision we have him making later on, right? The way in which, I mean, I like how Luthien's argument to him, basically, where he's like, but you're in danger. And she, you'll be in danger. And she's like, yeah. And, right, like the point is not to remain in perfect safety. Like, this is what I am, like I must do this despite the fact that it is going to put me into deadly danger, and I know that full well, right? And so the way that conversation can then set up Dairon's later choice to put himself in peril, right? Because it is the right thing to do out of his love for Luthien. I like that and how that can work. How we wanted to, but of course the trick here is that Luthien's never going to see him again after she escapes from the treehouse. So I was gathering from the way that this was being balanced that you wanted to achieve some kind of reconciliation between the two of them before she left, but it's hard because he's just betrayed her, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that I can see being a tricky kind of scene to write in that way.
Part of why I haven't written it yet, because I'm still working on the ideas for it.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of a change from what they originally had in outline that I kind of wanted to bring in, because just thinking about all of Finrod's goodbyes, I kind of realized that this was Luthien and Dairon's last time speaking to each other. And it's mentioned in the text that she does forgive him. So even if she doesn't yet forgive him, like in her heart, I think that she should still say, I forgive you, you were only doing what you thought was best. And Dairon will kind of take that to heart, realize that what he did, even though he thought it was best, was actually wrong, and now from here on he wants to work to help Luthien as best he can. That's why he'll do stuff like the eagle for them.
So the idea is that in the beginning, as you point out, he was concerned about her safety. So Thingol is also someone who is very concerned about everyone's safety, and that's been a kind of growing theme for him, especially his daughter. And so if that's the one storyline, then the other is or you can take risks in life, and sometimes that's the right thing. So Dairon is shifting his point of view there a little bit. Right. Luthien will be given an opportunity to recognize that he regrets what he did. Right. So we don't want her to forgive him before he expresses any kind of regret, because, like you said, he just betrayed her. Like, yeah, oh, that's okay, is not the right response. Right. So we wanted her to have some anger and frustration towards him. Yeah. But he is coming to visit her imprisonment, and he gets to explain himself and say, I'm so sorry, I had no idea this was going to happen. I was trying to look out for you. I had no idea your dad was going to stick you in a tree. Like, that wasn't the plan here. Right. So when he basically says, I messed up, this wasn't where I thought it was going, and I didn't realize what I had done, I'm not going to get involved in your business again. Like, how can I make this right? So once he talks through some of that stuff with her, yes, she can be in a position to offer some forgiveness, as long as the anger and frustration of why she thinks he shouldn't have done that comes out first.
Yes.
So because she's like, why would you get involved in my family issues? Like, why did you go tell my dad? Like, what are you doing? So she still does have that frustration, but yeah, we're not trying to end on a note of, I now hate you forever, never want to see you again, Dairon. Like, that's not how we're trying to end that scene.
Right. So in a sense, backing up a step from that, what was Luthien's plan? Was she going to sneak out without telling her dad?
At first, she goes to... Wait, where in the story are we talking about her plan? Is it her
before
plan?
Dairon reveals it? Like, if Dairon hadn't revealed it, would she have just, like, left a note and taken off?
She was definitely telling Melian, because I have her working with Melian in the kitchen packing their food.
Yeah, Melian seems to be complicit. That was pretty clear from the start.
She very much is.
Yeah.
I think she probably would have left without telling people and let Melian explain it.
I really loved that. That was actually one of my favorite things. Like, okay, so people are bringing presents to Luthien in prison, right? Some of various different practicality or use. What's Melian sending? Travel rations. That was fantastic. Just in case you need it, here's a backpack full of travel rations and things that I mean, you maybe in prison for some reason you'll need this, right?
Is and kind your of angry eyes, just in case.
Right. It just seemed really. I just loved the way in which, like, at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end, we say, like, Melian knows full well exactly not only what is going to happen, but what should happen. And she never opposes Thingol. She never speaks against Thingol. She, in public, she never, but, like, she is totally aiding and abetting Luthien all the way through from one end to the next. I thought was pretty funny.
It is, but it's also indicative of where their relationship has gone, that she's learned that speaking up to Thingol doesn't necessarily fix things, because he's not great at listening to her.
Right.
So she's gotten to the point of just doing her own thing and being like, well, Thingol will figure it out.
So, and she trusts Luthien enough to know that Luthien's going to get the message.
Yeah.
Why did I send you these travel rations? Oh, it's because they're going to escape.
Yes.
But just the general idea that Melian is so mysterious and just doesn't quite always say what's on her mind probably has a lot to do with the fact that she's married to Thingol. Like, I don't know how much of that was innately Melian.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense that she would, she's not at a place in their marriage where she is, like, opposed to him, but Melian knows what's best to happen. He's not listening. And again, she's not going to undermine him publicly. She never does that, right? But is she going to even come to the point of almost acting against him privately, which is what this almost comes to, not quite, but almost comes to, right, is that feels right, as a kind of balance there.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that she was showing clearly that she was on Luthien's side,
right,
while not directly going against Thingol. Like, Melian would not go set Luthien free from the tree.
Right.
Luthien has to do that herself.
Yes.
But Melian will make it easier for her.
Right, absolutely. No, I like that. I like that a lot. And then we have Dairon sees her, right? So we have Dairon not only expressing remorse, but reversing his previous action by seeing her escape and saying nothing about it, letting her go. Okay, I like that touch. And that helps to not only will we have shown some kind of verbal reconciliation between Luthien and Dairon before she leaves, but we can kind of help the viewer to be reconciled to Dairon as well in showing his different choice. I like that.
And at this point, there is a gulf between them now. So he's aware of her actions, and he's allowing her to do her own thing without getting involved. He's not interfering, but he's not part of what she's doing anymore.
Yeah.
So it's not like she doesn't request or involve him in her plan. He's not her confidant any longer. So there has been a change in their relationship and a break in their friendship. Even if she forgives him, that reconciliation never restores what was there before.
Right.
So we do see that distance at the end, but she expressed some forgiveness and he expresses some support. So they're in a good place, but apart.
Right. By the way, when it came to it, I mean, this is one of those things, one of those ideas that we talked through before and I liked in principle, but kind of seeing it played out. That is the sequence of Luthien convincing the tree to let her go, right? Was really kind of fun. And the way, I totally agree with you that having that done through song definitely seems like the right thing. Yes, the like how Luthien interacts, well, really, like how the tree responds, like how we can see the response of the tree is, I think was fun. I liked how that was constructed.
Yeah. So we'll have to write the actual song for that. And so the order and arrangement of things might change slightly just based on what rhymes with what. But that was kind of, I was writing down ideas and I had some ideas for lines and stuff. I didn't want to share those yet. I want to get the full song written and then add it to the script.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's great. Awesome. Well, I know we're running low on time. What was our C plot again? Dairon and Kelgrim and Kurfin. Okay, good. So we pretty much covered those.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Okay. Cool. Other Luthien elements. Where are we on the? I mean, I know in one sense we are at like the nadir of Finrod's. Finrod. Why do I keep confusing Finrod and Thingol's names tonight? We're at kind of the nadir of Thingol's character, right? Here, I this is pretty much his lowest point.
Until he gets in a fight with some dwarves over a Silmarillion, yes.
Well, that's more of a local low, but a significant one. But yeah, I agree. Yeah.
That's the only other contention for
it is gonna be. But yeah, as far as, because we've been. It's funny actually. Like we've been playing we can't make Finrod look like too much of a jerk too soon game for so long that now that the time of his full jerkitude has arrived. Thingol. Darn it! I said Finrod again, didn't I? What is wrong with me? We have been playing the let's not make Thingol look like too much of a jerk too soon game for so long that now that it is time for his full jerkitude to come, it feels unnatural. Right? This is that I think is the cognitive dissonance I'm having with the depiction of like I find myself like looking at the depiction of Thingol and being like, oh, that's really, really harsh. Maybe, because we've been trying to pull back from that all that. I'm like, no, now's the time to lean into it and make him
right. Yeah. Despite accusations to the contrary, we've worked pretty hard to make Thingol feel like a real person and not just some mustache twirling, overly protective, probably a little racist father.
Yeah.
The general idea is that people make pretty ugly decisions when they're fearful.
Right.
And we've tried to demonstrate over the last 2 seasons, like the one episode that Thingol had in season 5 and this season, that he's quite fearful of what's been happening out in Valerian.
Yes.
And the failure of the so the failure of the siege and the fall of Minas Tirith Tolsirian has shown that the Noldor can't hold back Angband.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was peace for a time, but they can't do that. So he knows that at some point those armies are going to be at his borders.
Right.
He doesn't know how soon, he doesn't know when or how or any of that, but Doriath is under siege in his mind.
And Melian has told him that the girdle will not last forever.
Right.
So he might interpret that as eventually the forces of Morgoth are going to show up and overpower the girdle.
Right.
Yeah. So his very legitimate concerns are being expressed in fear and draw everybody in and lock them behind this gate to keep them safe. So there's this bunker mentality going on with Thingol.
Yeah.
And it's
the same as what they're trying to do in Nargothrond.
Yeah, so it's a justifiable reaction to there's something very scary outside the gate.
Yeah.
But it's fear is very ugly. And that's what he's doing to his daughter is he's reacting in fear.
Right, especially when that fear becomes so immediately and starkly personalized in like it's not just my realm which is generally in danger, but like my daughter wants to go out and invade Angband, right? Like that's
right.
That's
I thought I solved the problem by sending her boyfriend on a suicide mission, and she's like, "Cool, Daddy, I want to go with him too." And you're like, "No, wrong answer. Wrong answer."
Not the plan. Yeah, how not only fear but then also guilt is kind of then connected with that, like that realization of like, oh crap, have I killed my own daughter by doing this? Right, like it's also influencing his state here and putting him in a suboptimal decision-making frame of mind, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's this again. This is the payoff that we've been trying for with our restraint with Thingol in earlier seasons, right? Is that when he does act in these ways as he's acting now, that we see how this stuff is building up in him, right? And how these circumstances are influencing him rather than just, he's just a villain, a villainous character from the beginning. It's just, he just has jerk in his DNA and there's nothing else about him.
I mean, he kind of does.
It's there's a touch. There's a touch. Yeah.
Hold on to it. Like it's Dirk mixed with enough wisdom and charisma that he becomes the king of this entire group of people.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's something that when I'm writing Thingol, I try to balance in there. I try to make all his decisions make sense to him. He's never completely irrational. Right. And I'll admit that Thingol is probably one of the harder characters for me to write. I just, for some reason, I can't get into his head when I'm writing dialogue for him. So if there are areas in the script where you guys think that Thingol sounds awkward or he should be a little less of a jerk or a little more of a jerk as the scene dictates, then please let me know, because it is one that I've always kind of struggled with, is how to write Thingol.
My favorite scene, my favorite Thingol scene, was the one where he and Melian are sitting on their thrones silently staring ahead, not talking to each other or anybody else. That was really nice. And the way that evokes like just inviting you to imagine what the two of them are thinking as they're sitting there. I actually kind of loved that little shot there. I think that could be really that could be really powerful if done properly. I mean, of course, we have to make sure the actors do a good job with that. But that's always. But I think they can probably pull it off.
Yeah, that was one of the things I added in there, trying to make him a little more sympathetic, inviting the audience to wonder, okay, does he regret this? What is he feeling about it? But then he explains to Melian that I would rather sit here in silence and sorrow in my kingdom forever than get the news that Luthien was killed off on some suicide mission.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Which, and the obvious benefit there is that what's going to bring out of all of this is he's gonna witness the death of Luthien, and her return will restore him, but he needs to reconcile with her before all of that can happen. So like the worst thing that I could imagine happening in my life is the death of Luthien, and we're like, well, guess what's gonna happen in a few episodes,
right?
But that we will have seen him grow from this place before then, so he has to deal with this fear.
Yeah, but that's the really cool thing, coming back to the contrast with Finrod earlier in the episode, right? Like, the thing that he doesn't see, that he has no glimpse of, is that the death of Luthien is only the beginning of the story, right? That there's so much there. It turns out there will be so much more to that story, and so much more to the marriage of Beren and Luthien. Here is Thingol. Here is Thingol with his very understandable but very kind of narrow-minded view of I couldn't handle it if she died. I only want to protect and love my daughter, which is again totally understandable and not a wholly unadmirable sentiment. And then contrasted with, on the other end, Finrod's insight, right? His, which culminates from everything that he's seen and the Athrobeth and everything else, realizing the love of Beren and Luthien, which Thingol has rejected for those understandable but narrow-minded reasons, Finrod embraces and says, no, this is worth myself. This is worth dying for and giving up my kingdom for, to help Beren and Luthien exist. So the way that the two of them are counterparts and sort of foils for each other within the inside the frame of this episode, I think is very cool.
It's like Finrod has the faith to let fate play out and run its course, whatever happens to him, whatever happens to his kingdom or anybody else. Thingol is still fighting fate, trying to control it, trying to keep safe the people that he loves.
And that ultimately, I think, helps to explain the gap between him and Melian, right? Because Melian knows. I mean, as soon as Beren crosses the girdle, Melian knows, here he comes, right? Doom has brought him. And so she can't be surprised when Luthien shows. She might not have foreseen the shape that the Doom would come, right? But when Beren and Luthien walk into the throne room together, Melian has to know, even more strongly than Finrod sees, right? This was meant to be, right? This is the Doom. This is not only Beren's doom. This is my daughter's doom. This is what should happen. This is what must happen. And then here's Thingol taking the, again, understandable but very narrow and shallow view of no, I just must protect my daughter and my land at all costs, and I'm not gonna have faith in that. I'm not gonna even go there. Or entertain that possibility. So, but it's very, I can relate to that. I can relate to his fear. I can relate to his doubt, to his love for his daughter and his concern for his kingdom. Ironically, right, in this episode, Finrod is being the bad king and Thingol is being the good king, right? I mean, ironically, from one point of view, and not even just from the point of view of Corifin's campaign, you can see that, right? I mean, it's what it looks like. Superficially, that's what it looks like, right? But the whole point is that we're inviting people to see below the surface there, as Finrod does and as Melian does, from one end to the next, which is why I like that shot of her looking forward and not saying anything, right, and thinking different things than Thingol is thinking. Very cool. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that this is, and this is, I have to say that actually, prior to doing any of the scripts or anything, I think that this episode was one of my least favorite. That is one of the things that I was least looking forward to, because I felt that the Nargothrond stuff was a little bit awkward and would be difficult. And the way that it's kind of like, right. I mean, and the way we get, like, you get episode 4, Tenuviel, and then we're going to get the, like, showdown with Sauron and the destruction of Tol, and then we get the, these 2 kind of interlude episodes right in the middle where we're just kind of putting things in motion. Anyway, it certainly would not have been, with there's so many huge, really amazing, big, important things happening in this season, that this episode was certainly not one that I was like thinking like, oh, that's going to be a really powerful episode, right? But I think that the way that the way we've been talking about it, the way that that it's been constructed, and the wonderful start you have on it there, Rhiannon, really, I think I am like 10 times more excited for episode 5 now than I was before we talked. So I think that's pretty awesome. Well, very cool. Okay, so next, the plan is to that our next session will be in 2 weeks. We're going to try to keep to our regular schedule, even though we're approaching the holidays. But Thursday, the 22nd of December is the plan for our next session, when we'll be discussing episode 6, when Luthien moves from one prison to another, and Beren. Actually, now everybody's just thrown into new prisons. We're
prisons all around.
Prisons all around.
They're playing musical prisons.
Huh?
And they are. It's like they're playing musical prisons.
Musical prisons, exactly.
They play real Twitch.
Yes, exactly. So
might lose somebody. Oh, it was Finrod this time.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, we will finally have the arising of the character we've been looking forward to, which is Huon, in the next episode as well. So Huon finally moves past his egregious cameos that he has received so many times in the last 4 seasons, and now will come into his own. So looking forward to that. So again, that discussion will be on the 22nd of December at 10 p.m. And the script discussion of episode 11, you guys are cruising, will be next Friday, the 16th of December at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And that will be here again on the Twitch channel. So you can take part in that live if you like, or watch it afterwards. And then you can join us for the discussion of what we have for episode 6 when we get there next week. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Rhiannon, thanks for joining us. That was really fun. Really glad you could make it this evening. And thanks for your work on that script. I know you kind of jumped in at the last minute there.
Yeah, they didn't have someone writing it, so I was like, do you want me to write it? I'm super busy these next 3 weeks, but when I have ideas, they usually flow pretty quickly, and so I was able to write half a script in that amount of time.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate it.
I have lots of ideas for the other scenes. I just need the time to sit down and write them.
Absolutely.
So hopefully at some point, by the time we get to episode 6 or 7, I'll have 5 completely finished. And then I can start on Curfin's campaign.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to both of those things. And thanks to Dave and Maria and Nick, as always, for joining me. That's been great fun. And I will say to everybody, as always, thanks for listening, and Godspeed.